What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to the latest episode of the Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast here on the Smark Out Moment channel, where we go back to the year 2003 and we're checking out all of the episodes of SmackDown that Paul Heyman was the head writer for. Joining me, Callum Wiggins, as per usual, on these journeys back in time, Robert DeFelice.
Happy Valentine's Day, Callum. Are you excited for today?
I'm about as excited as someone who's perennially single on these events can ever particularly be. Are you looking forward to it?
You'd be surprised. I'm right there with you. Jeez.
I mean, yeah. I appreciate that you think that I would be surprised.
Well, I don't know if that's a compliment to me or not.
It's definitely not. But we hope that everyone else listening to this, if you're listening to this on Valentine's Day, we hope you're having a happier time than us two single losers are. But if you are having a good time on Valentine's Day, what's your Valentine's Day plans? Drop them in the comments below, as well as your thoughts and feelings about this particular episode of SmackDown and the journey so far that we've been on. Drop a like on there as well. It obviously helps with the algorithm to make sure that more people can get access to this series that we've been doing for what is now episode 34 of this long journey that's coming very soon to an end. If you're listening to one of the podcast feeds like Stitcher or Spotify or something of that ilk, then if you can drop a rating or a review or anything that allows you to do, that's also greatly appreciated. There's an entire playlist on the YouTube channel where you can check out every single episode of this series from episode 0 all the way through to now. And yeah, so you can listen to it in perpetuity. And there is a link in the description to the WWE Network edition of this one, as long as this is still a period where you can actually access the WWE Network. So post-March, that's not really going to mean too much anymore.
As long as you know how to find access to these shows, you should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're here, episode 34, the Valentine's Day special of SmackDown. But we have to start with some news which is very, very disheartening, I'm afraid, as is often the way in our little trips back into the news at the time. Because this week saw the death of Mr. Perfect, Curt Hennig.
Ah, yes. Okay. So we're getting to that point again in these journeys where you can really recall where you were, how you felt, and this struck me so hard because he was just with WWE, and then following that, he had been in TNA, and you never like to see these stories. I'm grateful that we're in a place now where a wrestler dying in their mid-30s, early 40s is no longer super common. So this was one of the hard ones, but again, I'm just grateful that that's not the norm anymore.
Yeah, so Curt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, of course, 10 years in. It was the AWA, wasn't it, that he was a part of?
It was the AWA.
Yeah, obviously moved into WWF and WWE at different periods, time WCW for an extended period as well, and like you say, ended his career pretty much in terms of being in front of the camera in TNA. Do you know what his final match in TNA was?
Was it against Jeff Jarrett?
No, it was against David Flair in I don't know exactly what was on the pole, but it was a pole match.
Of course it was.
It was a pole match that ended by pinfall.
Of course it did. Why wouldn't it?
Yeah, so that's obviously a less than stellar way to end the career of somebody who, especially in his prime, was considered one of the greatest wrestlers to have ever worked at that point. Former Intercontinental Champion, true legend of the game. It's obviously a second-generation superstar who bore a third-generation superstar in Curtis Axel. Yeah, it's just...
I didn't know that David Flair had a tenure in TNA.
That was soon after his WWE release from when he was doing stuff with The Undertaker when he was still in the OVW and the training facilities. He got released, went to TNA, tried his hand at being a little bit of a wrestler again, and then swiftly retired soon after that.
So as it stands, at least according to his Wikipedia, his last match was on December 6th, 2008, when he teamed with Reed Flair, who was making his debut, to beat the Nasty Boys in a match in Charlotte where Hulk Hogan was the guest referee.
Oh, that's a
It
nice, cool little
seems like
tidbit.
a match that you wouldn't believe happened, but yeah, wow.
Yeah, so obviously Kurt Hennig's was in, like you say, he was 44 at the time. He was obviously he'd been in a WWE only less than a year prior, when they re-signed him after his appearance at the Royal Rumble in 2002. He went on to have a less than, I'd say, magical return in that regards, is that most of his matches were confined to heat and metal and stuff like that. And he was released soon after the plane ride from hell incident, I believe. It was something to do with him having a sparring match with Brock Lesnar on top in the plane.
Yeah. He
Um,
got a promo about that
yeah.
in TNA.
So yeah, that was basically a huge part of his TNA run was the fact that he out wrestled Brock Lesnar supposedly on a plane. But what was going to be happening was he was in Tampa for a fair show, which would have been called Jimmy Hart's All Star Wrestling. It was which was also going to be taping a documentary about what happens to former wrestling superstars after the mainstream has left them behind. So people that were on the show included Hennig, the Nasty Boys, Greg Valentine, Buff Bagwell, Conan, and Jim Duggan. He was scheduled to main event the show against the former British bodybuilding champion Ian Harrison, who had switched over into a wrestling career. But Hart had to obviously announce to the show beforehand of like 400 people in attendance that the death had taken place. They did a 10-bell salute before. I don't know whether they actually like commenced the show, but that's essentially how it
Given
was
that
announced.
it's wrestling, I imagine they did.
Yeah. Yeah. So the cause of death was declared as acute cocaine intoxication, and also a mix of steroids and painkillers as well. So that's kind of the MO of the old style of young wrestling death, unfortunately.
Yeah. Fuck, man.
Mm.
Wow. A coke overdose and painkillers. Uh,
Yep, it's
one of those
sad.
things.
That's how it ends for a lot of them, unfortunately. That
And
point in
how old
time,
was he? He was only 30,
44.
44. Okay, so well, even nowadays, it's still relatively young because I think that's like AJ Styles' age.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's that's a lot.
yeah, it's a hard thing. So obviously, he was survived by all his children. He was survived by both of his parents as well, which is something that obviously no parent ever wants to go through. But yeah, it's a sad thing note to start off on this, but it's an important piece of news because he was a legend in the wrestling business, and yeah, gone way too soon.
Absolutely, and yeah, just terrible. And this was a year that would see, you know, Miss Elizabeth pass, Stu Hart passes, just a Hawk like
Mm.
shortly after wrestling for WWE. It's just this is one of those years that's just like, damn, these wrestlers really do go too quickly.
So speaking of terrible news, obviously more in the creative and booking capacity rather than an actual tragedy like Hennig's passing, we saw the WWA Retribution show airing on pay-per-view. Obviously, WWA is that our old favorite World Wrestling All Stars.
It's I don't know how this thing is still going.
Well, it's because they're not working in America, but
I guess that's
but they
right.
are being headlined by former, well, American champions, as it were, because the main event of the show pitted Lex Luger against Sting for the vacant World Wrestling All Stars Championship. Vacant, of course, due to the fact that Scott Steiner was the previous champion and relinquished the title when he went to WWE.
Luger is how far away from having the incident that leaves him in a wheelchair?
It can't be too far beyond this point because, well, Luger at this point, at least he's mobile, but that's probably the best that you can say about him during this match with Sting. If you are willing to search it out, I wouldn't like recommend it, I guess.
Luger has a wild run because if you look at him in '97, where he's one of the hot top baby faces, for WCW. And then all of a sudden in 98, he's in the Wolfpack, he's wearing jeans, right? And then like suddenly he falls off the face of the earth almost after a pretty lame run in WCW. It's
Yeah.
wild.
Obviously, obviously in the last few years of WCW, maybe not the last year in particular, but towards the end, he was actually going by the moniker, the Total Package, rather than
I never
Lex
liked
Luger.
that. I thought that was dumb.
So Lex Luger defeated Sting for the championship thanks to 2 guitar shots from an interfering Jeff Jarrett. That's probably how you'd expect most shows at this point that Jeff Jarrett was involved.
Anything outside of WWE to end in 2003.
Yeah. Lex Luger would not hold that championship for very long because he would lose it to Sting on a couple of nights later on a different show on the tour. And Sting would be the final, quote-unquote, official World Wrestling All-Stars champion because the belt was, in a few months' time, merged with Jeff Jarrett's NWA championship.
I think that's the right thing to do.
The other piece of news features the debut of a superstar that would go on to be a pretty big deal for SmackDown in the year 2003, which is the debut of Tenacious Z in TNA. Tenacious Z, of course, being Zach Gowen.
Yes, and there's a great story. I can't recall off the top of my head of John Laurinaitis saying the wrong.
I've got this written up here.
Okay, good.
I've got so I can fill in the blanks, but it's good that you know that story at the very least. So anyway, Tenacious Z debuted. He got a victory over BG James, which is of course the former Road Dogg, on his debut.
Again, wild.
Yeah. So the story that Rob is referring to relates to basically the story that WWE got wind about the fact that there was a one-legged wrestler that was doing some cool stuff, and so they wanted to bring him in because they thought that would be a feel-good story, and maybe to a certain extent a freak show attraction. And John Laurinaitis was the one who was, I guess, tasked with hiring this guy, and he brought on another one-legged person called Steve. Not Sir. I'm trying to find his name here. I had it listed down. I've got it. But essentially, they found this guy who was like 6'3", 275 pounds, which is obviously about twice the size of Zach Gowen, probably. And yeah, he was missing a leg as well, and so they hired him as opposed to Zach Gowen, and then Zach Gowen. I don't know how they managed to get in touch with him later on, but then they realised, oh god, we've hired the wrong one-legged guy. We need to go get the actual guy back instead.
How do you make that mistake?
I mean, it's John Laurinaitis, so
yeah. I mean,
he didn't have the most. He didn't end up having the most stellar track record when it comes to, spotting talent at the end of his run. I mean, a lot of people that he signed to WWE are now the ones that are loitering, have loitered in mid-card purgatory for basically the vast majority of their WWE careers and are still like in their 40s and still working in the mid-card pretty much in WWE right now.
Which is a shame.
Absolutely. But yeah, so I think even though we're not going to be, because the journey's ending pretty soon, we're not actually going to get a chance to talk about Zach Gowen in great detail, but overall thoughts on his run on SmackDown in 2003?
I can't believe that he wrestled Vince McMahon on pay-per-view. I really think like this is a year that if I told you what some of the matches on the B shows were, you'd be shocked. Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper have a match in May on pay-per-view. And it's just like these weird middle of the card throwaway matches. And I think Zach Gowen could have been a great story for WWE. How they never did the story of him in the Royal Rumble where you have to have both feet touch the floor, I don't know. Like, it seems tailor-made for WWE, but yeah, I think they were in a position that they would get used to for the next decade where they could just drop the fucking ball on people. And it didn't matter because all you had to do was, hey, we're WWE, we're the only game in town, you know?
Yeah. yeah, so his story was obviously a little bit unfortunate. He comes in being a big deal. He's a fan of Mr. America. Mr. America's biggest fan, and brought in with one leg. He immediately is feuding with Vince McMahon, so they're pushing him hard off the gate. Then, as soon as that feud with Vince and Mr. America leaves, then it's pretty much he's dropped into the lower card. He has a feud with Matt Hardy. That's his only other pay-per-view match, is a match with Matt Hardy. Gets injured very soon afterwards, can't compete for a while, and then gets quietly released. So
how do you quietly release somebody who wrestled Vince McMahon on pay-per-view?
yeah, it's just crazy how like flavor of the months like him just lose.
For that matter, Lashley had that kind of a run too a couple of years later, where he wrestled Vince in, what was it, June, and by August he's just like gone.
Yeah, Lashley's one is strange in the fact that he was wrestling. He was pretty much, he was released the year afterwards, but he pretty much left WWE TV at the end of the year that he fought he fought Umaga and got Donald Trump's steed in that Battle of the Billionaires. And yeah, he won the ECW title from Vince McMahon, and he wrestled for the WWE Championship against John Cena. And then by the end of that year, he was gone, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's just how things happen in the crazy world of wrestling.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about Monday Night Raw before we move on to SmackDown. I think it's first of all pertinent to mention the ratings because, again, in a rare instance, but for the second time in 3 weeks, Raw came out on top in the ratings battle. So SmackDown's rating was a 3.64 for their pre-Valentine's Day edition of SmackDown, whereas the February 10th edition of Raw scored a 3.9. So it's obviously not a huge gap, but it's a fairly noticeable one, with Raw getting the victory here.
It's interesting to me as our Paul Heyman journey ends, so does their lead over Raw in the ratings. You can hate on Paul Heyman all you want, and many people do, but like that guy always knew what he was doing.
From a creative standpoint, I think for the most part, yes. I don't think he knew what he was doing in terms of trying to actually run a business. That was that was a little bit beyond his acumen, I think, at that point in time, as ECW can pretty much attest to.
I think it was always beyond his acumen.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's see what Raw managed to do to attract this rating, which was, frankly, not very much. So the whole main crux of the entire show was built around Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff. Because Vince McMahon had made the proclamation a few weeks ago that Eric Bischoff would be fired if he couldn't turn things around, as it were. He asked Eric Bischoff on the show whether he was able to sign Stone Cold Steve Austin. Bischoff said that he hadn't managed to do it. Despite Bischoff attempting to bribe Vince McMahon by using 2 lesbians. Because HLA was still... This is the last remnant, really, of HLA.
It's like, I can't believe that sentence just came out of your mouth, even though we've been covering it all year.
Well, I mean, they weren't just lesbians. They were, according to Bischoff, bisexual lesbians.
Well, yeah, because Vince is... Never mind. No, not going there.
But Vince turned that down, and Vince fired Eric Bischoff. Funny enough, Eric Bischoff earlier in the night had fired Jim Ross from commentary. And this all led to the closing angle of the entire show, which is Jim Ross coming out to talk to Vince McMahon basically afterwards and saying that he had managed to convince Stone Cold Steve Austin to come back at No Way Out. Because obviously Jim Ross and Steve are close. And Vince McMahon responded to that by rehiring Jim Ross to go back to commentary, and then he rehired Eric Bischoff to be the general manager, saying that he would do that on only one condition, is that he would be fighting Stone Cold Steve Austin at No Way Out.
There it is.
So that's one of your main events for No Way Out is Steve Austin versus Eric Bischoff.
Yeah.
Steve Austin's penultimate match in his career.
Which is fucking ridiculous. Like, I mentioned this on last week's episode, but it's just ridiculous that Eric Bischoff and Steve Austin have the final, well, second to final match that Steve Austin has. To me, Austin's career ends after he hugs Vince McMahon. Like I can like willfully let go of the alliance and just say, you know what, it never happened.
So other stuff that happened on this show. The Dudley Boys defeated Chief Morley in a 3-on-1 handicap match, which was essentially Chief Morley had to win to save his job, along with Bischoff's one. So he lost and he was fired, but then because Bischoff was brought back, he was rehired the next week. So it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Jeff Hardy's heel turn was abruptly ended when he saved Stacy Keibler from being bullied by Christian after Test defeated Christian in a match, and Christian like crotch Test and took it, and so Jeff Hardy made the save for Stacy Keibler. Jeff then proceeded to lose a match later in the night to Chris Jericho by submission.
Yeah, Jeff's run in early 2003 and even like mid 2002 screams, we were not ready for we're not ready for guys the size of Jeff Hardy to be superstars.
I think he's still being punished for his attitude and refusal to arrive on shows on time, and probably for the fact that he was probably very heavily into the drug paraphernalia at this point.
Right.
His career. So I think this is just more attempts of burying him because of that. Other stuff that happened, Booker T ended D'Lo Brown's win streak with no fanfare whatsoever, so it didn't even happen on a pay-per-view or anything like that. D'Lo Brown just lost his winning streak on a random episode of Raw.
Because Red Dog, baby.
You
know, we're about to switch that shit right over.
Batista defeated Tommy Dreamer. Evolution would beat Tommy Dreamer up afterwards. Booker T came out to try and even the odds, but was beaten down himself, and then Scott Steiner came out and eventually cleared the ring of Evolution. So that's how they continued to build up the World Heavyweight Championship match. Kane and
that
RVD.
Works for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's worse things they could have done, and they have done in this feud so far. Kane and RVD defeated 3 Minute Warning because 3 Minute Warning. I don't think in the last two months or so I've seen in any of the things that I've been researching for it 3 Minute Warning winning a match.
Does that surprise you? I genuinely, in my mind, they don't do anything after that Super Tuesday.
And Jazz defeated Molly Holly. So that was their first win back after returning from injury. So they're positioning her at the very point to be pushed towards the women's title picture, heading into WrestleMania at the very least.
I'm a fan of it because she's great. You know, like...
Oh yeah, she's great, and she's still great.
She's one of the best superstars that does not get her due.
So that was what Raw managed to do to get the ratings win. So now we talk about our main event, which is, of course, the February 13th, 2003 edition of SmackDown from the Centennial Garden Arena in Bakersfield, California.
Right.
So in California for this week, heading on to the West Coast for a change.
It's about damn time, too, because I really feel like they were in the Northeast for quite some time.
So to immediately... I think part of the reason why SmackDown lost this rating is because they announced straight off the back that there's going to be no Rock and no Hulk Hogan on this episode of SmackDown.
Yeah, I can see people tuning out.
Yeah, so they're going to have an exchange next week on SmackDown before No Way Out. Spoiler alert, the SmackDown rating next week is better than Raw's. So that's probably, again, part of the reason for that. And they also announced that it will be Torrie Wilson versus Dawn Marie in a Valentine's Day Bra and Panties match.
You know, I made the joke. I don't remember if it was on air or off air that Al Wilson didn't die for this. But, like, how can you just have a Valentine's Day Bra and Panties match with the woman that kind of killed your dad?
Well, that's the only way to really settle blood feuds like this.
I guess so.
You have to rip their clothes off. That's how things work.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about how things work on this show, aren't we?
Well, let's talk about the opener first of all. Actually, we also need to mention the fact that there is yet another crate that has been presented by the Big Show for The Undertaker, being suspended by a crane on the stage at the time being until it'll be taken into the ring. and we will have plenty to say about that as the time comes to it.
Yeah.
But first we have the opening match, Edge versus Charlie Haas.
Not much to say here. Like, it's great. It's also Edge's, like, isn't this his last match?
Yeah, this is his final match of his run on SmackDown before his neck injury that takes him
This
out
is
of
his
action.
final match, like pre-Lita issue, isn't it?
Yes, because obviously part of the circumstances that led to the Edge and Lita affair was the fact they were both on the shelf at the same time.
Right.
So that was part of it. But yeah, so this is the last time we're going to see Edge in an in-ring capacity. He does appear on next week's episode of SmackDown, so he wasn't out of commission at that point, at least between now and the next episode of SmackDown. It's between the next episode of SmackDown and No Way Out when he's ruled out of commission entirely. I believe they do actually like the write-off angle itself on No Way Out. So we'll be able to review that on the Patreon edition. Obviously, if you are at the $10 tier or above, following us on Patreon at patreon.com/Smark Out Moment, then you'll be checking out all the pay-per-view reviews that we've been doing as this series has progressed, and the next one coming up soon will be the No Way Out one. I'm just figuring out the day in particular, I believe that would be the 23rd of February. So that'll be when it hits your inboxes then. But as for this match, yeah, it's a perfectly good match. You can still tell that Charlie Haas isn't quite there. He's obviously got all the raw potential in the world that you need, but he's not quite there yet. But Edge is there to carry him through it, and overall, it's a solid opening match.
Yeah, it's I like seeing these guys push to the moon. It makes me sad that that nowadays people aren't being pushed to the moon like that.
No.
But yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, it's just a young guy that's being put over an established name. So you had Haas throwing as many suplexes as possible. You see Kurt Angle watching the match from a desk backstage. You see like Northern Light suplex. Obviously he's still a heel. He pulls Edge down by his hair whenever Edge seems like he's going to break away. Edge fights back, hits an enziguri, which Haas takes a massive flip bump for.
Right.
He gets hit in the back of the head and does a full rotation off the back of it.
You gotta love shit like that, though.
There's something in this match that I don't recall ever seeing before, which is Haas doing some unique heel hook pin on Edge, basically rolling through Edge trying to do a DDT and getting into a really odd pinning predicament for it. I've never seen it before, and I don't know whether I would want to see it again because it looks quite clunky, but it was interesting.
I think innovation like that is cool, though. I mean, like you said, it does look clunky, but at least they tried.
Edge knocks Heyman off the apron because Heyman was out there with Haas and he was causing a bit of a distraction. So Heyman takes another bump. He's been taking plenty of those recently with a spear off the apron. But this allows Haas to perform an O'Connor roll and get the pin on Edge. Crowd doesn't actually react at first because I think they were actually just like surprised that it would end like that. But yeah, Haas gets a victory over Edge, leading into what would soon be the six-man tag at No Way Out, but we'll find out more about that in the next segment. But yeah, good match.
Great match.
Colin Taz informed us that Nathan Jones is coming exclusively to SmackDown. Lucky us, of course. Not so lucky in the fact that we would
do.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not so lucky that we won't actually get the chance to see much of Nathan Jones by the time this journey ends.
No, that is the lucky part.
Yeah, but he'll have a interview on the show next week, so we'll get to see that at the very least.
Nathan Jones is a weird anomaly of a thing, and we've talked about a lot of this series, but I just can't believe that he is on the streak. Like, he's in the streak. He's part of that in some way.
So we cut to Kurt Angle sitting at Stephanie's desk. He's sniffing a rose because obviously the Valentine's mood is in the air. She comes in. He compliments her hair. Stephanie says that she needs to tell him something, but Angle says that he needs to show her something, and he gives her the rose. No, it wasn't as bad as you might imagine. Again, it's 2003.
Well, it can't be.
Angle's a gentleman.
Kurt.
Kurt's a gentleman.
Except for when it comes to Booker T's wife in a couple of years. That's a different story.
Yeah. Stephanie thanks him for the rose, but says they need to talk about a match. Angle uses the opportunity to say that they're a perfect match already, and he leans in to try and kiss her. But before he can reach her, I don't think Stephanie was too thrilled about the idea. But then Lesnar comes in, breaks through the door, says, "Am I interrupting something?" And Angle is obviously frustrated. Angle and Lesnar square up. Stephanie informs Angle that it will be Team Angle versus Edge, Chris Benoit, and Brock Lesnar at No Way Out. At least that is what he's intended.
Yeah, I remember. That would have been a good 6-man.
Lesnar says that he's looking forward to it and invites Angle to sit ringside to see him destroy John Cena later tonight firsthand. He leaves. Angle's frustrated about all this, and so he just, like a moody teenager, takes the rose from Stephanie McMahon's hand and just pouts.
Hey, that's top notch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he's great at that sort of thing. We move on to what's supposed to be Rikichi versus Nunzio. So a repeat from last week, and they show a replay of their match from last week and Nunzio's threat towards Rikishi. Nunzio's now wearing an oversized leather jacket.
Well, that's what you do when you're a mob boss.
And he attempts to leap on Rikishi during Rikishi's entrance, but is caught and slammed to the floor. And I don't think Rikishi was taking too much care about how well Nunzio landed.
He deserves it. You can't jump at a big man like that.
No, that's true.
Like, come on.
But then Rikishi, when he goes to inflict some more damage, is attacked from behind and sent into the steel steps by two assailants, who are identified by Cole as Chuck Palumbo and Johnny the Bull Stamboli. So
this, to me, was a great use of Johnny the Bull Stamboli. Because where else are you going to slot a man with the name Johnny the Bull Stamboli?
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic.
Oh, no, it's the perfect fit for him, and it goes to show that as soon as this trio ended, he was basically shit canned. But yeah, so this is the formation of the full-blooded Italians, which would be a stable on SmackDown for the majority of 2003. They tailed off towards the end of the year. But Nunzio's like the small mob boss. I think they had like a thing for that because they did pretty much the same thing with Spike Dudley and the Dudley Boys a couple of years later.
Oh, right, because he became the boss and he told Bubba and Devon what to do, which I always thought was weird.
Yeah. So Nunzio, despite being the less physically intimidating of the three of them, is the one that's actually the brains and behind their whole operation. Like, they hold Rikishi in place. Nunzio screams in his face that this is his family. Rikishi headbutts Nunzio in defiance, gets more of a beat down. Nunzio then gives him the kiss of death on the mouth, and then they attack him more, leave Rikishi laying. So,
I think this is great. I wish that they could have done more with this, but such is life.
Yeah, you had to just leave Nunzio floundering in the cruiserweight division and release Johnny Bull Stamboli and turn Chuck Palumbo into an already shitty version of The Undertaker.
Yeah.
So Cole and Taz again hype up Hogan and Rock being live next week, with Taz doing some ridiculous Hulk Hogan poses.
Because that's what the whole world wants to say. It's weird to me that Taz is such a goof, right? Because we see it on AEW now. We see
he's so serious.
He's so serious when he's a character, but he is a goof when he is a commentator.
Well, again, it's just one of those things of, I mean, he is still a bit of a goof on AEW as the commentator as well, and definitely was in TNA. But it's just, especially with the WWE side of things, just like, okay, this guy was a killer in that other promotion, but he's a funny small guy. Like, it's funny that he thinks that he's really hardcore and physical and stuff like that because he's tiny.
Yeah, I think Taz found a second home in comedy, even though it's so clear that WWE could have done more with him as a wrestler or just as a manager, as we are seeing now.
So we move on to Rey Mysterio versus Matt Hardy. So interesting matchup here. Something that we will be referring back to when we get to doing our review of WrestleMania 19.
Which is amazing, because I think nowadays that's something WWE would never do, is run a match at Mania that you've already seen on TV. It's very rare that, like, Mania might be the start of 20 matches, but it's very rare that you've already seen it on TV on the road to Mania.
So Matt informs us that he gets more Valentines than Jeff Hardy. And that he doesn't send anyone flowers, but he only gives them chocolates instead. It's good to know. Although it's obvious that Matt Hardy isn't eating too much chocolate at the moment because he is trying to slim down fast for an opportunity at the Cruiserweight Championship against Billy Kidman. They inform us that he has gone down from 230 to 222 pounds. So he's dropped 8 pounds in a week. He still needs to find...
Not healthy, but you know what?
But no, that's the story.
But it's closer to his actual weight, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I assume that at this point he's actually close to around about 200. But yeah, that's the story. And it plays into this match quite a lot because Matt Hardy is wearing a lot of like rubber appendages, should we say, and on like underneath his suit, which is his attempt to sweat off as much as possible. He talks about the fact that he's completely dehydrated. He hasn't been eating. He's only been like drinking certain amounts of fluid as well, just because he's so desperate to get down to the cruiserweight weight limit.
You know, I think this is clever. I think Matt Hardy has proven time and again that he gets comedy, and I wish the cruiserweight title meant more, because even back then, like, this is probably the most high-profile cruiserweight title match in existence, the one we'll see at WrestleMania, but even then it didn't mean much.
So this match, Mysterio does a lot of flying stuff early on. Hardy manages to take over when Mysterio misses a plancha to the outside. He hits a gourd buster, dropping Mysterio across the top rope. Gut wrench suplex. Taz talks about how he uses Stacker 2 on commentary, which I don't think was really that good for the sponsorship deal. Because Taz is pretty big.
Well, Stacker 2 love themselves some pro wrestling.
Matt Hardy applies a torture rack. Quite interesting. We talked about Lex Luger earlier. But
yeah, I think he can do that to Ray. Ray is one of the few people he can do that to.
Mysterio counters that into a really nice bulldog. Commentary talk about how Hardy is winded now at this point. Mysterio lands a seated senton. Taz talks about how someone's foot has fallen off in the ring because a piece of Matt Hardy's tape is now lying in the ring somewhere. So you just assume that a foot's fallen off.
That's right.
Hardy rings into the ring post. He eats a springboard moonsault. Hardy catches Mysterio off springboard into a side effect. That was a nice spot. Matt Hardy starts breathing really heavily as he attempts to twist the fate, but he does it so slowly that Mysterio is able to get out of it easily. They do a spot where Mysterio leapfrogs Hardy, but I don't know whether this was due to the fact that they were trying to play off that Hardy is so winded that he couldn't get out of the way in time or anything like that, but he collides with Mysterio in midair. And
I'll let it slide. It was part of the story.
Yeah. Some transitions then leave Hardy completely out of breath and collapsing on the middle rope. So rather than being kicked onto it, he just falls into the middle rope.
Sweating that weight off, baby.
Mysterio hits the 619, hits the West Coast Pop, and gets the win. So it was a really nice match, and it told a consistent story throughout about how Hardy started off hot, but got more and more tired as the match went on, and that eventually led to his downfall. The one thing I don't like about this is that Matt Hardy is supposed to be getting a championship match at No Way Out. Yet he lost this match, and there's no ramifications for it.
They'll play into it when Ray beats him at Mania, or Ray fights him at Mania.
I guess so, but it's just a case of, well, realistically, if this was like the way it should be going, Mysterio should at least be added to that match for No Way Out, or he should be taking Hardy's place, because I understand what the story they're telling, and it's totally fine, but in my mind, I just don't like how, and it's not just back then, it's now and stuff like that, that losers should not be getting title matches.
I agree.
But again, the story itself is funny enough because Hardy, like, he pants near the announce table. He says that that loss doesn't count because he was dehydrated. He'll make the weight that he needs to by No Way Out.
I like that. The loss doesn't count because I was dehydrated. It seems like a downgrade from Matt Hardy, even though he's being tossed around. It seems like a downgrade from what he was doing beforehand. However, still great. Still like everything that you've grown to love from Matt Hardy.
But we see Benoit doing some press-ups backstage with a bloodshot left eye because he's still feeling the effects of being busted open in the match with Kurt Angle the previous week. While A-Train walks the corridors and there's like a below-angle camera shot that emphasises the size of his huge belly.
Because why not?
I wonder how they got that shot. Because I kind of just assume that it's just like a cameraman that's just crawling on his back, just pointing upwards at A-Train.
I imagine there's a crane somewhere.
Yeah, I know, but I prefer to think of just a guy just laying down and just having to just scramble.
A guy on a little scooter, just like, all right, go.
Yeah, he's just leaning backwards on a skateboard or something, and he's just going backwards.
Guerrero style shooting.
They showed a video package of Brian Kendrick's streaking attempts last week and his other attempts to get a job in WWE.
You know what's great about that is somebody just did that, like, at the Super Bowl.
Did they?
Yeah, won like a $300,000 bet for it too. Got arrested, but won a $300,000 bet.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah.
We see backstage Sean O'Haire says that he was impressed with Kendrick, saying that's how you make an impact. Kendrick responds that he got into a lot of trouble, but they're both then approached by everyone's favourite Bill DeMott.
Everyone's favourite indeed.
The ultimate bully, DeMott slams Kendrick repeatedly against some lockers until O'Haire gets in his way, gets nose to nose with DeMott and says that the kid's had enough. And so I'm getting the perspective from that O'Haire's a babyface.
No, he's the balance. He's almost like Aleister Black. You know, he says no man's ever truly good, no man's ever truly evil. Like, I think that's the vibe he's putting off here.
Yeah, but it does give the impression that they're going to build towards O'Haire DeMott match.
They know it has sucked, but you know,
the whole gimmick ended up sucking because they decided to just put him with Roddy Piper instead. But
which is amazing. Which, like, again, like that 2003, they threw some shit at a wall, and it just so happens that John Cena and Batista are the only two things that stuck.
Orton.
Well, I guess that's true too. He was getting repushed in 2003, but it's legitimately those guys. The reason they only talk about the OVW4 with Lesnar and Cena, Batista, Orton is because out of everything they threw at the wall, those guys managed to stick.
So we have Chris Benoit versus A-Train. So A-Train is like outpowering Benoit early, absorbing his chops, dropping him with like a reverse elbow. He hits one clothesline in the corner, but another attempt leads to Benoit trying to lock in the crossface. He attempts it a few times. A-Train hits a couple of high-angle backbreakers onto Benoit. He targets the back of Benoit for the heat, taunts Benoit, slaps him around a little bit. He then applies an interesting reverse full Nelson, which is
cool move.
Yeah, it's essentially like he's got Benoit held up in the full like back to back essentially, but he's got a full Nelson hold on. And so that was an interesting move. He drops hard to his knees as well to do another like backbreaker. A-Train hits a Vader splash off the middle rope. He only gets 2. We see our second torture rack of the evening with A-Train doing it to Benoit now.
Well, you know, Lex Luger did just win a title.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you gotta go with what the champions use.
A-Train then misses a splash and is hit with 3 German suplexes. Benoit goes up for the diving headbutt. A-Train avoids it, connects with the bicycle kick for 2, although he clearly missed by a mile because they chose a really bad camera shot for it.
I hate when they do that. Especially on SmackDown when you're taped.
Yeah.
Do it again. Like...
Benoit counters the derailer into the crossface, and after a bit of a struggle, he forces A-Train to tap out. Again, it's like another solid match. Yeah, nothing too much to complain about here. Benoit's good. A-Train is perfectly capable and safe in the ring.
Fun fact, I think it's at No Mercy this year that they have another match, and that is the beginning of Benoit now using the sharpshooter to finish matches as well.
Oh, funny fact about this as well, we're also going to see this match again next week.
But I mean, yeah, if it ain't broke.
I kind of got an epiphany in this match that, you know how a lot of these matches are a lot shorter than the matches we see nowadays.
Yeah.
I almost kind of like that.
Yeah.
Because
I think it's much better.
Because matches don't get interrupted by commercials.
But that's part of the reason why.
Yeah, you get to see the whole thing, you get to see the heat and everything like that. Whereas nowadays, because there's some sort of mantra that every single match has to be 10 to 15 minutes at least, it's not as good.
It's one of the few Russos that made sense, where he would say, I never had a match go through commercial because you're sending the message that it doesn't matter. Yeah. And I was kind of like, yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, he's like, again, a broken clock is right 2 times a day.
That's correct.
So let's say that, let's move on to a man called Joe Francis knocking on the women's locker room door and is greeted by Torrie Wilson. He says that he's from Girls Gone Wild and that they're doing a special spring break edition on pay-per-view and that he wants Torrie to be the very special guest.
I mean...
Do you know anything about this Girls Gone Wild pay-per-view?
Here's what I know about Girls Gone Wild. You couldn't watch Spike TV without seeing an advertisement for it. I know that the pay-per-view was like put on by WWE, and that during that pay-per-view, I believe it's Snoop Dogg told Kevin Dunn to shut the fuck up or something to that degree.
I mean, again, if you couldn't love Snoop Dogg any more than already, like, he knows what's going on. So essentially what happens with the Torrie Wilson thing is that Torrie Wilson appears and she has she's supposed to have like a quote-unquote contest with Nydia. And Stacey Keibler and Jonathan Coachman are also hosting elements of this as well. At one point, Stacey Keibler licks beer between it's not beer. I think it's salt actually, because Torrie gives her a shot of tequila or something, and then Stacey licks the salt from between Torrie's breasts.
Yeah,
because that's what they were doing.
Like, how do you want me to react to that? What do you want me to say?
I'm just explaining to you what happens. So I don't expect you to comment. I just expect you to listen and move on. And Torrie teases like stripping completely, not completely naked, but taking her bikini top off. And at the second that she was about to do it, Nydia attacks from behind, and we see nothing because WWE always teases that things you're going to see super things.
Why now? Why? Like, Nydia has been irrelevant since Jamie lost the Cruiserweight title. What happened?
Well, we'll find out later in the show why she needs to be positioned to at least be doing something, because it's not about her, it's about Torrie. But in order for Torrie to be doing things, she needs other women to be doing things on the show as well. But we'll talk about that. So Torrie, after being asked by this guy to join the Girls Gone Wild pay-per-view, says that she can get pretty wild, and he emphasizes that this will be as uncensored as it gets.
I have a feeling that it wasn't, but you know.
No, I basically said like, oh, it's as uncensored as it gets. I'm now expecting absolutely no form of nudity whatsoever, because you're just... That's what WWE's conditioned me to do. If you said, oh, it's going to be super raunchy, you're going to have Stephanie McMahon do HLA or something like that.
I'd imagine tits on a Girls Gone Wild pay-per-view.
Yeah, but I don't imagine that Torrie's going to show her tits. That's what I'm talking about with that side of things. Like, the WWE side of it is bad. If you watch his eyes during this backstage segment, he's looking at her tits like constantly.
I mean, that's just on brand.
So, time to figure out what's in the box, part 2. As we see a replay of a show throwing Taker off the stage 4 months ago. Paul Heyman is in the ring alongside the crate, and he does a little bit of spiel before Taker comes out. He mocks Taker's signature taunt as he comes down to the ring. Last week, Taker sized up the crate, but this time he opens it fairly nonchalantly, and it reveals, of all people, Kanyon dressed as Boy George. We're going to talk a lot about this. Yeah. So, okay. So, well, the first thing we have to mention about this is that the version that we see on the WWE network version is not what happened on TV.
Yeah. How about that?
Because they do some shitty as hell editing of this. of basically they managed to pull out some clips of Canyon in like WCW in the early 2000s or whatever, saying who better than Canyon and stuff like that. Whereas actually what happens on this, on the live show itself, is that Canyon sings "Do You Really Want to Hurt Me?" as obviously Culture Club and Boy George would do. And I guess they don't want to be copyrighted claim for it. I could not find a single clip of him actually doing this online. So as far as I'm concerned, it didn't happen. But yeah, I couldn't find any record of him doing it. I did look for a little while to try and find it. If anyone can find it, then you're more than welcome to drop it in the comments below and make sure that everyone else can see it. But after that little performance, Canyon attacks Taker from behind. Taker makes his inevitable comeback, destroying him with fists on the announce table in the timekeeper's area. His shirt looks like a big red bib. I have to always mention that because this Undertaker sucks.
Yep.
Taker drags Canyon to the ramp side of the ring, with Heyman is just like looking from the top of the stage. He delivers several hard chair shots to the back, followed by one of the loudest and most egregious shots to the head ever recorded on TV.
This chair shot is uncomfortable to watch.
Mm-hmm. It is insanely over the top, completely unnecessary amount of violence attached to it. There was no need. I guess the idea was that Taker was going to be showing what is going to happen to the Big Show, but it was way over the top. Obviously, we talk about no chair shots should be happening to the head, and we're happy that they don't do that nowadays, or at least very often. But even in the era where this thing was sort of allowed, or at least like accepted, this was going way too far. The most interesting thing about it is the fact that there was but right before he did it, there was a PG sign in the top left-hand corner of the screen.
How, I'm at a bit of a loss for words because I don't know how much I want to get into the idea of
how it's affected Canyon.
Yeah. So Canyon's gay, right? Or
he'd come out as gay at this point in the not publicly, but at least backstage he'd come out.
And apparently he had stated he wanted to try to come back to TV and have that be a part of his character, but not in a stereotypical way. He just wanted to be, hey, I'm Canyon, I'm still Canyon, but I'm gay. And their response was singing, hey, we'll put you in a box and sing, do you really want to hurt me?
Yeah, dress him up as the flamboyantly gay Boy George. And yeah, and then getting beaten up by the Undertaker and
for being, which is in retrospect made worse by the Undertaker's comments of when men were men. And all of this, we're covering this at a weird time. All of this just seems so uncomfortable. I would as a kid, I was like, oh, hey, it's Canyon and he's singing Boy George. Weird. Knowing what we know now, it's just super uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you can't always go back and look back on these past things and totally enjoy yourself. Really, you grow up and you learn new things, and
it's one of those things that's yeah, it's shitty.
Yeah, so let's try and move on from it then, because there's not much else we can really talk about.
One question though: how is it that they all love Pat Patterson? They all love him, and they loved apparently
Vince, because he was Vince's guy.
That's so
kind of had to like him.
That's so wild.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's not that people disliked Canyon. I'm sure the people that did dislike Canyon just for being gay, and they're awful people, of course. But it's just a case of, I guess, that Pat Patterson, because he was a prominent backstage figure and a likable guy, and he was Vince's right hand man, then obviously there was no way that people were going to get be super offended by him doing it or anything along those lines. But if it's one of the boys in the locker room, and it's like, oh, I don't want one of those guys in my locker room. If we're getting changed in there, he might be looking at me all weird.
You know, you ever hear about how Vince told Scott Hall the Razor Ramon, the Goldust Razor Ramon thing, and he leads off with, "Let me tell you about my first homosexual experience," and it genuinely makes me go, I wonder how okay Vince McMahon is with things like homosexuality and things of that nature. For all we know, Vince McMahon might be like a huge ally.
I don't. No, I know we can always have like bad raps of Vince McMahon for certain things. I don't think, at least in that regards, he's demonstrably bad or anything like that. I think it's one of those things that, again, this is just speculation, so don't obviously take it as gospel or anything like that. I think it's something that he's fascinated by, rather than like egregiously hate. Like he does. I don't think he likes it or he hates it. I think he just would be fascinated by it.
Yeah, I think that's a great word.
Yeah, so I think he's fascinated by it, and he thinks that he can use it for some sort of entertainment value. That's basically what I think he regard his attitude towards homosexuality would probably be. I don't think he's anti-gay. I don't think he's like necessarily super pro-gay or anything like that. But I just feel like, he feels like if he can make money off of it, then it's fine by him.
Well said.
But so yeah, we'll talk about. I think we've pretty much covered this topic as much detail as we kind of want to at this point. So let's talk about Matt Hardy desperately cycling backstage as Moore coaches him to lose the extra 2 pounds.
Love it.
Yep, very funny. Something else that's pretty funny. Funaki approaches John Cena backstage and says that he speaks Cena's language. He untucks his shirt, puts on a baseball cap sideways, and then reads off a card, "What up, dog?" Because Funaki's great.
You know, like we can hate on some of the stupid things where they're like, I can't understand it, but like some of this shit is just gold. Like, what up, dog?
Cena responds by saying that all Funaki knows about dogs is how to make them fried rice.
And there we go. And there we go. I mean, like, come on.
Yep. Again, just something is literally what he said.
You have to understand something. The reason that this elicits such a hysterical response from me is because we all know that John Cena now is like Mr. Let's all hold hands and be inclusive. And it's just funny that this was his viewpoint. Like, wow.
So he does that. He cuts a promo on Brock, knocks Funaki's hat off, and leaves. We move on to Eddie Guerrero versus Shelton Benjamin.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a match I would have. I mean, I don't know whether we do see it later on or anything like that in like later years, but it would have been really. I mean, this was good regardless, but it would have been great.
It would have been good to see it when Shelton was IC champion and Eddie was the single.
Yeah, just had a few more reps under him. So Benjamin comes out with Haas, but says that he'll do this on his own, at least initially. They have some good chain wrestling to start. Benjamin gets advantage with like an arm drag and a snap power slam, very similar to the Randy Orton or Samoa Joe power slam. Eddie reverses like an arm hold into a Saito suplex. Benjamin lifts Eddie out of a head scissors position into an electric chair. So that was a nice spot. There's a massive back body drop by Benjamin, followed by a unique looking backbreaker where he just goes across the back of his knee, leaning backwards. Guerrero at one point hits a twisting Northern Light suplex for a 2 count.
How cool is that?
Oh, it's super good. It's just like these guys were just like, we can do really cool innovative suplexes. Let's just do them. Let's just do this in this match.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Benjamin, he sets Guerrero up to do an electric chair off the middle rope, but Eddie escapes that with a sunset flip powerbomb.
Because of course he does.
Yep, right. Haas comes out at this point, causes a distraction, so Eddie dives onto him rather than Benjamin. Benjamin then manages to avoid the frog splash and pins Eddie off his dragon whip kick. And I said a couple of
you,
weeks ago.
You were asked for that.
Yeah, I said a couple of weeks ago, I wish he pinned someone with that move. And lo and behold, he pinned someone with that move. So I'm totally happy. He never have to pin a guy ever again with that move. That move is now set for life because it can always be a potential finish because he did beat someone with it.
I'm shocked that he didn't beat more people with it. It's also shocking that he beat a guy who legitimately is the next WWE champion, like the next fresh WWE champion, because it's going to be Angle Brock, Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a good match. Obviously, Team Angle had to have some interference to get the victory, but they're the young guys, so you do have to have that certain element of they wouldn't be able to beat Eddie on a straight one-on-one match. So
right.
It's pretty significant. There's a video message from Hugh Hefner.
Oh boy.
Over at Playboy magazine, it says that a WWE diva will soon feature on the cover of Playboy magazine, and he just leaves it at that. He gives no indication of who that diva might be.
Do you think Stephanie was in talks?
Well, they actually mentioned this on Taz. Is adamant on commentary when we head into the next match that it's going to be Stephanie McMahon on the cover of Playboy, and I seriously don't think that would have been an option. I mean, it's interesting to speculate, but I really seriously doubt. I think it's one of those things that I think people would be happier to fantasize about rather than that actually coming close to reality.
Yeah, but I think if they asked for her, I think she would have done it real quick.
I don't know whether she would have done it. I think that there could have been backstage people trying to suggest maybe she would do it. I think she's one of those people because Trish refused to do it. Like, I'm sure basically every other women's wrestler outside the ones that did do it refused at one point or another.
That's pretty cool that Trish refused to do it. You know, like, hell yeah, Trish. I appreciate you.
So we move on from that to Torrie Wilson versus Dawn Marie for the Valentine's Bra and Panties match. The ring has like a Valentine's theme surrounding it. There's lots of red and pink pillows and balloons and cuddly toys and chocolates and all that other stuff. I think they went to an effort.
Yeah, but again, like, they used to go through a lot of effort for these. You could say what you want about these matches, but like, they used to make it a spectacle for the girls, and it's just so shitty.
So they're still announcing Dawn Marie as Dawn Marie Wilson, which I guess she still is because you don't stop being someone's stepmother when the father dies.
Well, I would have been upset if they hadn't, because like, really, how fast are you going to let this thing go?
So Torrie ambushes Dawn on the ramp, who immediately counters and beats her up. Within seconds of getting in the ring, Dawn immediately removes Torrie's shirt and chokes her with it.
Yeah.
There's loud "take it off" chants in the by the crowd. Torrie leaps over Dawn in the corner, does an O'Connor roll, but she manages to get away before Torrie can remove her tights. She just exposes the panties a little bit. Torrie hits a baseball slide to Dawn after being hung out on the top rope, as Cole asks how a Valentine's Day Bra and Panties match differs from a regular Bra and Panties match.
5 stars to him. I really do appreciate that.
Cole mentions that at one point Dawn was Torrie's stepmom, so he seems to believe that as soon as the father dies, that's just annulled.
Okay, well,
And
they weren't married for too long.
And Torrie removes Dawn's top. Taz asks what Al Wilson must be thinking of this, and Cole reminds him that Al Wilson is dead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like, come on, it's a tape show. Fucking do it over.
You know what's even funnier about that is that they did the commentary in post as well. So, but I mean, I decided to keep it in because it's just hilarious that Taz just completely forgot that Al Wilson died in storyline.
Fucking hell, man.
This is the point where we get where we break into, this is just a match where we just want to see women get down to their bra and panties. Why are you going on so long? Because they do a load of sunset flip transitions where nothing happens and they don't remove any bits of clothing. Dawn hits a springboard clothesline out of the corner, hits a body slam. She then starts climbing the turnbuckle backwards. Seemingly, she's going to hit the first ever top rope moonsault of her career here. And so Torrie immediately pushes her over the top rope slightly so she can pull her pants down and then hang her out to dry, essentially. So
Yeah,
Dawn,
but like, I don't know, because it's weird. Like they're trying, right? You see some sunset flips. They want to wrestle, kind of, but it's awful.
So Torrie wins. Post-match, Nydia charges in, attacks Torrie. Dawn joins the beatdown. Torrie avoids a double clothesline, hits one of her own, takes Dawn out of the ring, hits a few body slams and clotheslines. She body slams Nydia, removes her shorts. So Nydia's been stripped as well, slightly. Does another O'Connor roll so she can then spank Nydia in the ring.
Well,
yeah. Torrie then teases the crowd at the end by showing off her panties for a few seconds before leaving.
It's at that point, if you're gonna be like, "Well, I'm doing this for the crowd," then then lose. If you want to do that, then lose the match.
See, I've always argued this point. If the match is a bra and panties match, then the objective is to keep your clothes on. It doesn't mean that Torrie doesn't want to always be in her panties and showing off to the crowd. It means that for that particular match, she can't take those clothes off.
It's just silly. It's just
I know, but the whole thing at this point is silly. So
I'm really glad that, and obviously the world has changed, but like I wouldn't know how to review these things on a week by week basis, so I'm glad they don't do them anymore.
So we have the tail of the tape for the Brock Lesnar and John Cena main event. With Cena's accomplishments on this tail of the tape being listed as having a PhD in thugonomics.
Hell yeah.
And being a 5-time West Newbury freestyle champion.
That's not even real. Like, come on.
I'm just saying, can we mention something quickly? He's a former OVW heavyweight champion.
Yeah, but OVW doesn't exist.
Just list his OVW accomplishments. He's an OVW world champion. He's an OVW tag team champion. So just put those down. At least show he's got some wrestling credibility.
Yeah, but the funniest thing to me is John grew up like super clean too. Like, you know, he's just a kid from Boston who went to a private school, the West Newbury 5-time freestyle champion. At that point, just say he's got no accomplishment and he's looking to make one right now, but beating the shit out of Brock Lesnar.
Did you also notice what John Cena's finishing move was listed as?
No.
It was listed as the kill switch.
Huh.
Yeah, so I guess that's where Christian got his one when he moved over to TNA.
So at this point, he's not doing the FU.
No.
So that's just what they're calling the Protoplex.
The Protoplex, yeah.
I think that's better than Protoplex because you can't call it that if you're not the prototype. But the kill switch, I don't even think I've ever remotely heard it referred to as that.
No. So I literally don't think that he had a name for his finisher and they just put something there.
Well, yeah, because he wasn't winning with it either.
No.
But then again, we're not covering velocity on this journey.
No, that is true. So he might have been getting a few wins. I mean, I think during this journey, he's had his match with Daniel Bryan now.
Yeah, which is another one of those really cool things to look back at.
So Lesnar comes out for his entrance. He gets a steel chair out during his entrance, sets it down near ringside so Angle can come down and watch it from ringside. But spoiler alert, Angle does not come down during this match. Huh. Yeah, so Cena cuts his traditional rapping promo, with the main semblance being that Brock Lesnar is dumb.
Yeah, V5 I forgot my name. It was.
Yeah, it's just it's quite interesting looking back because it's been well established that for the past nearly 10 years or so, Brock Lesnar is one of the smartest people in the history of the wrestling business because he managed to get one of the biggest contracts ever to doing the least amount of dates.
Yep.
Yep. Super smart man.
But he's a country bumpkin, and they never want you to forget that.
Yeah. So I took out a few choice lines, as I tend to do. Tonight I silenced them all. You're a Neanderthal, so I'll use words that are small.
Not his best.
Big Brock Lesnar, here comes the pain. God built me strong. Forget to give me brain.
Okay.
This is the best one though. You hop around all day like there's potatoes in your crack. That's a nice tattoo of your mother on your back.
All right, see, I like the God built me strong, forget to give me brain, and I think the mother on the back is the icing on the cake. It started off very weak, but John Cena knew what he was doing.
It still hasn't been like the best line that he's done so far is the next big thing. Let me take your pants off. That's the best one.
That's fantastic.
Lesnar immediately assaults Cena, throws him around with belly to bellies, drops Cena hard across his knee with a backbreaker. Cena crawls out of the ring after another throw. He's then military pressed onto the announce table. Cena is allowed to do something a little bit where he gets a thumb to the eye of Lesnar, but Lesnar immediately cuts him off. Nails his shoulders to his back and launches him across the ring with another throw. Lesnar exposes a turnbuckle pad because he's obviously pissed about the mother comment, probably. And ref tries to stop him when he goes to reassemble it or see what he can do with the turnbuckle pad. And during that time, Cena punches Lesnar in the head with a steel chain.
That's a vintage Cena.
Yeah, absolutely. So
he beat him like that, didn't he? He beat him like that 10 years later. That how he beat him at Extreme Rules?
He beat him with the F5 onto the steel steps. FU on the steel steps, should I say. Or attitude adjustment at that point.
Because I remember...
He did hit him in the head with it, though.
He ended up using that chain, because it was, weird, because he had stopped wearing a chain for a long time at that point.
So, Cena gets a near fall on that one. Lesnar starts selling really well. He gets really wobbly because, obviously, he's just been hit with a steel chain. Gets hit with a back suplex. Cena then grapevines Lesnar with a chokehold. Lesnar manages to lift him up, drives him into the corner, but Cena still manages to keep hold, puts Lesnar back down onto the mat. Lesnar gets up again, runs into two turnbuckles this time, and Cena eventually breaks the hold. So they're giving Cena something here at the very least.
Good. I'm glad, because he obviously, we know what's going to happen to him, but he worked pretty hard. And I always felt like, yeah, his early run was shit, but they threw him in the deep end, and he didn't deserve that.
So Lesnar whips Cena into the exposed turnbuckle, followed by a couple of belly-to-belly throws. He then drives Cena headfirst into the exposed turnbuckle, no DQ for some reason. And then he hits the F5, gets the victory. It's a decent main event. I wouldn't say any more than that. Cena just gets a few licks on Lesnar, but Lesnar is clearly the dominant force in this one.
Yeah, as he should be.
Lesnar grabs the mic and tells Angle to get out here. When he gets no response, he decides to try and essentially bait Angle out by F5ing Cena into the ring post, the same way that he did it to Angle a couple of weeks, a month or so ago.
That is genuinely one of the coolest things ever. And I don't know how he hasn't done that in every match where he's facing Finn Balor or Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles. Brock Lesnar should absolutely be tossing people into the ring post.
So an angry Angle tells Heyman that he's been punked out, and he shouts at the camera that he's coming down against Heyman's advice. Angle stands on stage. Lesnar says that he's calling his bluff. He challenges him to a fight right now. Angle says that's fine with him, gets in the ring. They go nose to nose, but then Angle says he's not fighting tonight because he's got a sinus infection.
Kurt Angle's such a dork. That's awesome.
Brock calls him a chicken shit because Brock is one of the only guys that's allowed to swear on TV.
Well, yeah, it works for Austin, and we're still very much in that Austin era, so if you're going to get over, you got to swear.
Angle then says that they can go one-on-one next week. Lesnar agrees to this, even though the crowd is obviously disappointed. But he drops him with a clothesline, does a belly-to-belly throw. He whips him into the steps on the outside. He then teases that he's going to F5 Angle again into the ring post, but he's saved by Team Angle. Lesnar destroys both the tag team champions single-handedly, including an F5 on the floor to Benjamin. Then he stands over a fallen, cowering Kurt Angle with the championship belt, taunts him, drops the title over him, and walks to the back.
Boy, I'm really glad that he's going to have backup at the pay-per-view.
Yeah, very much. Like, he just destroyed all 3 members of Team Angle on his own. So, like, Benoit and Edge.
He really needs Edge and Benoit. That's going to be very helpful.
Yeah, if anything, Edge and Benoit are only there to potentially help Lesnar lose the match. Yeah. But yeah, overall, I think it was a pretty good show. The matches themselves were pretty solid throughout, except for that Bra Panties debacle. And all the shit involving Undertaker and Canyon. That is something that's best left consigned to memory. Or hopefully removed from memory at some point. Lesnar keeps being built strong. Team Angle picking up wins. They built up the fact that Hogan and Rock are going to be on the next week's show. So, yeah, it's pretty good overall.
I mean, this show is WrestleMania compared to what we see today.
Oh,
but
absolutely. I try not to compare it to today too much because like everything we've watched so far has been so much more digestible.
But as we're talking about 2002 and 2003, this is a run-of-the-mill show. And yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, there were obvious parts I didn't enjoy, but we talked about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do we have to look forward to next week? So next week is the penultimate edition of the actual journey itself for the February 20th edition. So we have the challenge has been laid down for Kurt Angle versus Brock Lesnar to happen on this show. Obviously, we'll see whether that actually takes place.
Good. I was going to say, I wonder if it does, but obviously we know. Come on.
Yeah.
Not giving you main event of WrestleMania away.
No, what else do we have on there? Of course, we have the much touted confrontation between Hulk Hogan and The Rock. So Rock will be live and in person.
That's for the first time since SummerSlam, is it not?
Yeah, it would have been, yeah. So that's good to see. We have a Padawan pole match between Torrie Wilson and Nunzio.
Because of course we do.
We have a few other things. Matt Hardy and Shannon Moore against Billy Kidman and Rey Mysterio just before their match at No Way Out.
I like it because all 4 men know each other very well, and this will be a good one.
Yep, so that's pretty much the main talking points that we'll be covering on next week's edition. And before we get there, though, let's drop a few plugs out of the way. So I mentioned Patreon earlier. That's where we're doing our pay-per-view reviews at this point. So following next week's edition of the regular Paul Heyman SmackDown podcast, a few days later, dropping on Patreon will be our review of No Way Out 2003. So make sure you're tuning in for that one if you're at the $10 tier or above. Of course, any amount of money that you can give is greatly, greatly appreciated. So if you are able to spare it just $1 or any amount of money whatsoever, if you can drop $1, if you can drop $1,000, whatever you can do.
Worth saying that if you do drop that $1,000, you're at this point a producer of the show, and we have to listen to legitimately. You can tell Tony whatever the fuck to do.
Yeah. So that's
he'd appreciate that though. He does have a wedding coming up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He would be totally fine being your bitch up until the point that the wedding takes place. So.
He's having a much more eventful Valentine's weekend than Callum or I.
At least you'd hope so. Other than that, we have in terms of like one-off payments and stuff like that. There's of course the merchandise shops at Redbubble and TeePublic. So if you want to pick up some Smark Out Moment merchandise, head over to there. Other ways you can support us outside of the monetary side of things is, of course, heading to the website, smarkoutmoment.com, checking out all the articles, leaving comments, sharing them around with your inner circle of people. It's very, very helpful to just get our great writers some exposure, show off some of the excellent work they're doing on the website on a weekly basis. And you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Smark Out Moment. Join the Megamaniacs, facebook.com/group/the Megamaniacs, where you get to join a group of like-minded wrestling fans, get to shoot the shit about what's ever happening in the wrestling world at that point in time. For Tony, of course, there is Fanboys Anonymous, the geek culture website where you can check out everything related to movies, comic books, video games, TV shows, everything under that umbrella. Of course, myself and Rob are helping you out with the Review to a Kill podcast, which is the James Bond retrospective series that we're doing right now. So make sure you're following every single episode we're putting out there as well.
I'm pretty sure we are at least through Goldfinger at this point.
Yeah, I think Goldfinger was the most recent one. So there's plenty already there that you can sink your teeth into, and there'll be plenty more to come in the coming weeks and months. So be sure to like their YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow their website, fanboysanonymous.com, follow them on Facebook, Twitter, buy merchandise from Redbubble and TeePublic, sign up for the Patreon, all of that other great stuff. Rob, let us know what you're up to.
Yeah, okay, so it is currently Saturday, February. God, it's on
13th, bro.
Saturday, February 13th. Yeah, I completely forgot because I've been saying Valentine's Day, but I know that that's tomorrow. So what you want to do is you want to head over to Fightful and go check out all the coverage of Impact Wrestling's No Surrender, which features an interpromotional match for the Tag Team Championship, which features Tommy Dreamer getting a world title shot on his 50th birthday, and so much more. Tomorrow, we'll have all the coverage of NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day, and we have the full breakdown of Triple H's media call from Thursday on this show, on this website. So check that out. Of course, check out Tony doing the review for NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day. Check out all Tony's articles regarding NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day. Just click around. The support means the world to us. And you can follow me on Twitter at DudeFelice.
Yeah, and you can follow me on Twitter at Wigweister14. And thank you very much for joining us. And we will see you next week for the penultimate edition. But for now, this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.